We're here in Chicago. It's cold, and we lost a heartbreaker to the Los Angeles Rams. I really have special interest, of course, in the Bears, but as I was watching the other games, people have a short memory, a short political memory especially. And in the earlier game was Texas and New England. And after the game, players from both teams knelt on the field together, black and white players, holding hands, saying a prayer after the game, all together. And they would have been attacked for this just a year ago, a season ago, when Biden was still in office. Before the Bears game, you had a huge American flag came up that looked like it covered the entire field. And when they were singing the national anthem, I could see the Bears players and also the LA players, they were visibly moved by the way that national anthem was sung, the way the flag had been rolled out, except for you could see the pride that they had just exuding out. Nobody was demonstrating. Nobody was protesting. Again, all those divisions were caused by this last administration and the Obama administration before them. And this it's a lot of nefarious activity. But I want to bring those up because the divisions are not supposed to be there. That this is one country under God, one nation under God. I remember that, there were Bud Light commercials on. And just a year ago, they were celebrating transing our kids and pushing this ideology down on us. Now these hypocrites from Anheuser-Busch are, they got football players on there now, and they've got real men back in there. And this cheap, terrible tasting beer, I hope nobody's buying it yet. Just these hypocrites, they make you sick. But you got to remember that. That's, again, why I have a Trump hat back there. Not because he's Jesus Christ, not because he's God, but because I really feel that God is using him to do some good in the world. If the Biden, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz should have been our vice president, according to Kamala Harris, can you imagine the disaster we would be in right now? So for years under Obama and Biden, Americans have been told that the chaos around us is accidental, that the drugs flooding our towns are a tragedy with no author, that the border is complex, we can't solve it, the foreign powers are merely competitors, that what we're living through right now is just politics as normal. This is just part of the routine. But what if it's not? What if the fentanyl killing our sons and daughters is not just a crime problem, but a weapon? What if the mass illegal migration is not simply humanitarian failure, but pressure applied with intent? What if criminals, gangs, cartels, foreign intelligence services are not parallel problems, but parts of the same system? What if we're already at war? What if we just refuse to name it? Because while Americans argue over headlines, something more serious and nefarious has been happening. Hostile regimes have been exploiting our compassion, causing divisions, our denial to look at reality in the face, and our unwillingness to think in terms of national survival. No tanks rolled across our borders, no missiles hit our cities. Instead, the attack came quietly, through drugs, through money laundering, through mass population flows, through captured institutions, through information warfare, through the slow corrosion of sovereignty and confidence. Tom Hampson is with us today. Tom wrote an incredible article, A War by Other Means. And the most dangerous part, wars like this only work if the target, if the people are asleep at the wheel, if it refuses to believe it's under attack, if it doesn't see reality, if it becomes apathetic, then this could work. If we stand up and start to understand this and bring the good into this story, it won't. Tom, I want to start at the foundation and welcome. It's so good to have you. You've been writing incredible articles, one after another. I always put your Substack in the show notes. People need to look at that. You argue the United States is already under attack, and not in the way most Americans think about war. When you say hybrid war, what do you mean?
The weaponry that's used by the enemy is something that most people don't recognize as a weapon. I remember back in the 60s, was it? The earliest, maybe the 70s, when they started the war on drugs. So it's, this is a war on drugs,
70s,
but nobody thought as the drugs being a actual weapon of war. That was really a law enforcement issue. And now in in the Trump administration, now they're blowing up the drug boats coming into the country because he's recognized it as actual war. And so just take drugs as one example, as one of the mechanisms that's used by enemies to hurt this country. And not only do drugs erode the core of our youth, but it also kills a lot of us, 100,000 Americans every year, which is almost twice the number that was lost in the multi-year Vietnam War. So that they're killing the youth of America. They're destroying huge swaths of the character and quality of life for millions of Americans, and that's just one. It's just one of the hybrid weapons that are used out there. I mentioned in the article too, another big weapon has been this surge in immigration that's been promoted by other countries to bring people into this country and change the very character of it. It may have started in the 70s, but it didn't catch on until the 90s, where there's this saying that diversity is our strength. It's not our strength. Diversity is not our strength. Our strength is in unity. That's another weapon that they can use to undermine the culture of our country. We're the only country in the world where we see our rights coming from God, not from the government. It's the only one. It's the only one that's ever been that way. And that's the very foundation, the core of the foundation of our country is that God has given us unalienable rights that every citizen, every person has. Every person in the world. It's not just the United States. We believe this belongs to everybody in the world have these inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that there's all kinds of other rights that emanate from those. And so when you have a culture that comes in here that believes that the government should be all the power, should control whatever rights we might have, and they're coming in by the millions because every other country has that, we can't assimilate people into our way of life fast enough, as fast as they're coming in. So what that does is it overwhelms our whole system of government. And that's a weapon that's been used by foreign powers to hurt us, to undermine us, to create chaos and havoc in our country. It's a lot of it. If you want to learn more about it, you should read the 36 stratagems from the Chinese or the writings of Sun Tzu, where you use other means to conquer your enemy. And that applies to, it applies in China, this ancient philosophy in China. It applies both in military war, business competition, and in everyday life. It's used to undermine it. In the East, where all this comes from, the value, like in China, out of these 36 stratums, the real value is not in transparency, it's in deception. Hybrid warfare is something that looks simple, but is actually a weapon. It looks normal. Even the idea they can turn what appears to be a really great political philosophy like libertarianism and turn that against us, because libertarians want drugs to be legal. They don't want any restrictions on the use of drugs. So they promote libertarianism in order to be able to flood the market with more drugs. And so that we create this controversy in the country. So not only you're creating controversy and chaos, you're creating a genuine problem. And what I mentioned in the article, A War by Other Means, was much of this activity was based in Venezuela. The Chinese were there, the Russians were there, the Cubans were there. It became a center of drug trafficking, promoting the promotion of illegal immigration into the United States and money laundering.
Let's stay with Venezuela, Tom, for just a little while, because people will still ask, I thought Trump was against wars, that didn't want wars. Why would he go in and invade a country, kidnap the leader there, and bring him out for justice? People have no clue that this war was already being waged. We didn't start the war.
Right.
Trump didn't start the war. He's defending the country. And if people don't wake up to this, Tom, it's a nefarious activity. There's so many different parts of this. It's this multi-headed serpent, this hydra, with so many things coming at us as a nation and as a people. But Venezuela has a lot of those elements all inside there. And unless people wake up and really see that this is a third world war, has already been launched, it's been going on for a long time, and all of these elements you say, Tom, like the Chinese, instead of being an explicit war, it's a covert war.
Right.
And again, why you think about just something as simple as fentanyl. Drug cartel wanted to keep its clients alive, right? Its customers alive. You would never actually lace everything with fentanyl because you're actually killing your own client base. There's evil behind all this stuff, and
Right.
and you realize that this doesn't even make common sense for cartels and criminals. But let's go to Venezuela because you really unpacked this well. How did Venezuela function day to day as a hub, and why listen to this, Russian, China, Iran, Cuba, all these criminal networks were all there at once. And then finally, Tom, what role did oil play in binding these actors together, and Maduro really bringing all of these various elements together? And there's a reason for all that, isn't there?
Well, yeah, China needed Venezuela's oil just to function. One of the things that China is doing, I think it's every week, maybe two a week, I'm not sure. They're still building coal-powered power plants. And the reason that they have this huge energy need is not to keep people warm and to turn on the electricity so you can have lights and everything. It's to fuel this massive artificial intelligence project that they have going on, that they are trying to beat us in the area of artificial intelligence. And so that's this subsurface kind of goals that they have going on. They need oil to fuel it, and they need us to be crippled. And so that there's a dual reason for them to be there, is to gain access to the oil, and also to use it as a place where they can easily control and use it as an operating base in the Western Hemisphere that makes it simpler for them to get drugs into our country, to exercise influence in countries all around the area, to send illegal aliens up here. And all of this activity requires being able to move money around, so it's a good place for money laundering activities. It's right next to Colombia. So Colombia is a center for the cocaine, close to Mexico, where they can have greater control and influence over Mexico. The cartels run Mexico. So they have this symbiotic relationship in Venezuela, and when Trump going in there, it disrupts the whole thing, especially the oil. He goes after Maduro, claims that the oil is ours, and really embargoes everything except oil coming to the United States. That hurts Cuba. Cuba's going to collapse. It hurts China. It weakens China's ability to further their artificial intelligence efforts because they're going to be short of energy. So there's a whole lot of things, and he did it under the banner of going in and arresting Maduro, who has a U.S. indictment against him for drug trafficking. So he engaged in a war in a way that somewhat in the same way that they're engaging us in war by other means. He went in there and arrested the drug dealer. But the drug dealing is only one of the instruments they're using to wage a war against the United States. One of the things that people don't realize, and I was in intelligence back in the 60s, during the Vietnam War, during the height of the Vietnam War, and one of the primary instruments that the Russians used in fighting a war back then, it was a proxy war for them. We were really fighting Russia. Russia was funding and providing weaponry to the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. If it wasn't for Russia, they wouldn't have been able to run that war. But what very, very few people realize is that Russia spent more money in our anti-war movement in the United States than they did in funding the North Vietnamese. And so, because what they wanted to do is create chaos and division in the United States, help further their interest in Vietnam. And that was in the early days when this hybrid war was really going on. So there was a hybrid war back then. that was engaged in. They funded a lot of the anti-war movements. They're funding much of the efforts in this country to destabilize the country. We know, for example, in Los Angeles, that Roy Singham, who lives in Shanghai and is very close to the Communist Chinese, have been funding all of these efforts, these ICE efforts throughout the country. He's put millions of dollars in this. His wife, who lives there in Shanghai with him, is the founder of Code Pink. So
Code Pink, did you say?
Code Pink, that's the one that was they're the ones that went and marched against Trump in his first inauguration.
Yeah.
And
So here, Tom, when when you start to talk about immigration, and I want to expand on what you said. So Venezuela, we have the cartels there. We have the Chinese there. We have the Russians there. We have Iran there. We have all of these elements that are against the United States. Really a destructive process against humanity itself, human beings themselves. You could see what they do to their own people, and then they want to do the same thing here. You mentioned Mexico and Colombia. Have some violent extremists there and drug cartels. Mexico is really run, like you said, by a drug cartels. So why would Biden open up the borders and allow all of this to just come right into our country? That's what ICE is facing. And unfortunately, when you create these disasters, this chaos with open borders, you have some good people trying to get a new start, fleeing other countries, but they get caught up in all of this crime. They got raped. They got child sex trafficked on the border. They became basically wage slaves to the cartels, even when they got here. And so now when we're rounding all of these nefarious people back up that really want to undermine our humanity, really, undermine our nation for sure. Now some of those innocent people are going to get caught up in this, but this is what happens when you allow chaos to come in. Tom, how many of those people were here? I mean, I don't remember the statistics anymore. How many of those people came in, military age men that came in here, and they're just allowed in? So all in these cities around, we see the violence, we see the drugs, we see these protests going on. This is really a third world war, and I don't know if people understand it because, like you mentioned, the propaganda is so thick, being funded by Soros and these other people that you mentioned, funding these DAs, these crooked politicians, etc. Tom, do you think the majority of the population, do they even get what's going on?
No, that most of them don't. In my own church, we have a program where we're providing delivery services to illegal aliens who are afraid to leave their home for fear of being picked up and deported. Okay. And they don't see that, the church doesn't see that as really being agents of these foreign powers that are engaged in a hybrid warfare. They see it purely as, all these people are they're poor people that need our help, and they're fleeing other countries where life is bad, and we don't think the government should deport them. We want them to stay here, and so we're going to help them do that. Well, that's just foolishness. To me, there's just millions of people that are being foolish. I think Allie Beth Stuckey wrote a book called Toxic Empathy that kind of goes in, and I wrote an article recently about the subversion of compassion, that our compassion is in favor of people who are downtrodden, who maybe are poor. We understand why they want to leave these, as Trump put it, the S-hole countries that are so terrible. Listen, I've been to some of those countries. I understand why people want to get out of there, but we can't take them all. We just have to be able to assimilate people. You can't just
Tom,
bring people
yeah,
in.
no, for sure. And look, at our hearts go out to some of these people. Like I said, they get caught up in this that are actually innocent, but I never hear the church. I never hear those churches, go after those countries of origin and say,
No.
look at these immigrants that we're trying to help here. We're helping because how screwed up their countries are. And we have to make sure while we're doing this, and I'm talking, the churches should be saying this, while we're doing this, we have to make sure our country doesn't turn into that third world country, because that's
Right.
exactly what's happening in Europe right now. If you go to in certain quarters, big quarters of the UK, the
Yeah.
Netherlands now, these are rape communities. These are no-go zones where the police can't even go in there anymore for danger of their lives. And they're just continuing to allow this. And I'll just say one more thing, Tom, that on Tucker, Eva Vlaardingbroek, I think her name is. She's from the Netherlands, bright young lady. She was asked the same question. She goes, by Tucker, do you think the citizens of your country get this? And she says, no. The propaganda, these countries are going to hell in a handbasket right now.
Right.
And these countries, these populations are asleep at the wheel, Tom. They only turn on this propaganda news. They don't dig for any sources. They're apathetic. And at the end of the day, it's lawlessness. These people have morally given up God, given up their own moral conscience. And you know what, Tom? They're blind. They're just blind
Right.
to the evil going on around them. And those countries are not going to fall. They're falling right now as we're speaking.
Well, the thing is that in this country, I think it's the last poll I saw that there's something like 60% of people are against what ICE is doing now
Yeah, I
because of
saw the
all of
same
the
thing.
publicity that's been shown, that woman that was shot up in Minnesota. Looking at it from an investigator's eye, he was justified in shooting that woman. There's not going to be anything that's shown that isn't, but there's other people that look at it. The average person looks at it and says, well, it was no, she's just a woman. Her intent wasn't to really run him over just because she hit him. It was probably an accident. She ran the car right into him. Who knows that maybe she was going to put it in reverse again and run over the other agents too. Like who you don't know that. You don't know what her really intent was. She actually ran over the officer. He had internal bleeding as a result of being hit by the car. And yet that incident has really turned people against it because they don't want to see somebody killed, because she's a mother. She's there.
Yeah, I get this. And you know what they forget, Tom? How many young people, beautiful young women were killed by these same migrants, right? How many children were sex trafficked over the border? How many women were raped on the way in? We forget about all this other stuff. I get it. No, nobody wants to see somebody killed, but this woman would put herself in that place, right? She has some responsibility and blame to take for that. She does floor it. You could see the wheels spinning. Thank goodness it was on some kind of ice and it slipped and didn't get this guy full on. Here, let me ask you this. I mean, with a lack of conscience, with a lack of moral foundation, compassion becomes exploitable, right? We just become feelings, Tom, because we have no foundation. What was assimilation before, to your earlier point, that we would allow enough people to come in and assimilate into our culture, people that understand that we had certain laws and certain beliefs, a certain culture that they would agree to come in, right? And now it's reframed as oppression. This is oppression. We have to let these people be who they are, right? So they come into our country, dilute Christianity, and we allowed it, Tom, because we've diluted it in our own hearts already. And so we are in a very vulnerable position if we don't wake up. And thank God some of these young guys that I'm talking to, Tom, are waking up, because it's not the baby boomers and Generation X that are waking up unless they're, I think, part of this populist movement that realizes that there's no political solution alone to this. We have to be involved in politics, but we have to love our country. We have to love our family and our culture, and we have to bring a force of good to fight this force of evil against us.
Well, that not all, just because you're a mother doesn't mean you're not a killer. Kathy Bodine, who was a member of the Weather Underground, was a killer. She went to prison because of it. She was in prison for decades. I think she just recently got out, but she was an absolute murdering mother, okay? And her child was raised by two other murderers who never faced justice because of it, and that was Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. Kathy Bodine's son, who grew up to become Chesa Bodine, who's like the worst prosecutor in San Francisco ever. He wound up being withdrawn. They did a withdrawal vote to get him out of there. San Francisco really descended into the pit became one of those S-hole places that Trump was talking about. It became so bad they had updated maps on where you had to worry about walking in human feces.
You have this stark line that says, "Our enemies are not at the gates, they have already come through them." What do you want most Americans to understand right now before it's too late? And what does victory look like in this war? It seems like this is going to be with us for a long time, Tom.
Right.
And my concern is because of what you just brought up. The propaganda is so thick out there. We have so much really evil, nefarious money, dirty money coming in to this fueling this propaganda and these protests and stuff, that if we lose the midterms here and Trump no longer has a majority in the Senate, this country can go, Tom. I mean, we're on a precipice right now.
Well, I think the main thing is we need to have people recommit to learning about and achieving a biblical worldview. We need a revival. Less than, um, you know, uh, less than 9% of the people who claim that they're Christians actually hold a biblical worldview. They have their
mm,
own version of a biblical worldview. Today we have almost nobody fears God. They have no sense that they're going to face any kind of consequences. What is moral is whatever they think it is at any given time. And so we really need to bring that spiritual core back into our life. And then the other thing I think that people can do is begin to insist that the laws be followed. Why there's 60% of the people that are not supporting ICE is just beyond my understanding, because they are enforcing the law. They're picking up people who are terrible people and getting rid of them. The MS-13, Tren de Aragua. We need to just stop tolerating sanctuary cities and states and counties. This is unacceptable. These law enforcement agencies, the ICE officers, have no backup from local police. There's nobody providing crowd control. There's nobody that is helping them stop these people that are harassing their operations and literally impeding their operations to pick up the bad guys and deport them. The people that Biden let into this country, they have to begin to understand what really is going on underneath the surface rather than. I don't mean just sound bites from the news. They have to begin to understand, read articles like mine. There's other people. Peter Schweitzer is coming out with a book on the invisible coup, where he focuses on this illegal alien surge as being a weapon that's used against us, and how people in our own country are complicit in it. And I detail in one of my articles the specific people that have helped further this illegal immigration into the country and how they did it.
Tom,
So they need to understand these things.
yeah. Let's talk as we start to wind down here. Talk a little bit about the research that you're doing. I know that you're seeking to expand the research and the capabilities that you
Right.
have, the people that are working with you. What can our listeners do, Tom, to help you? Some of those tools that you're using, some of the people that you're working
Right.
with are can bring some powerful solutions and answers, and fight this propaganda war that we're facing, and continue to bring out the truth. Because I'll just say this, it really is a lot of independent journalists like you, crime investigators like you look at that Nick Shirley, what he's been able to do up in Minnesota. These have to happen. It has to
Yes.
be hundreds and thousands of independents like you are, to bring this to light. It's not going to happen just to one person, but when we can start to expand this with a lot of people standing up for what's true, good, and beautiful, understanding the essence of these problems, understand that the battle that we're in. So as you try to expand, Tom, how can people help you?
Well, one thing is we need money to help fund the AI systems that I put online. They are very expensive. I use multiple AI systems to help do the research, because what happens is that the truth is hidden within a blizzard of facts.
Mm.
Blizzard and lies. There's just a blizzard of lies out there, and it requires an enormous amount of meticulous research to ferret out what the truth is among all this chaff. And so, I use AI to help further the research. It helps identify where a lot of the money is coming to fund this. For example, this group some people have heard about as Arabella Advisors. It's now turned into Sunshine Services, but there are 7 different foundations that are part of that provide billions of dollars of money to fund a lot of these left-wing projects. Foundation, you got the Ford Foundation, you have all these groups that are funding a lot of these causes, sometimes innocently. I'm sure that most of the time it's innocently, but the outcome is one that's very bad. Now, I also have another program that I use to help identify the links between all these different organizations. Well, to do that normally would take me maybe a couple hundred investigators, but with AI, I can do it with just a few people helping me.
So, Tom, we're going to wind down here. Like I said, a lot of these individual citizen journalists, we're working with peanuts. If you can do something monthly for Tom and try to break some of that overhead that he has, we can continue to do a lot of work.
TruthAllianceFoundation.org. There's a donate page on there. You can just go there and donate. We use them. Everything that we bring in, we use to fund the costs of our research, and that and believe me, it's pretty substantial.
And because I know, Tom, that the donations that you receive, none of it goes to your salary, does it? It just goes to overhead.
No, actually, I give money to it myself. I don't.
Yeah. So I think that's important for people to remember. Nobody's getting rich on this. Help out if you can. It's a worthy cause. So today's conversation isn't about panic. It's about perception. Because history
I just lost my job because of because of some of my articles. They didn't like them.
Yeah, well, that's the way. It's the price you pay, right? When
Right.
we witness for the truth, and we've seen that throughout history, because history is unforgiving to nations that refuse to see reality until it's too late. Bishop Fulton Sheen said this on his television program many years ago. Of the 22 major human civilizations throughout history, 19 of those declined and were basically destroyed from within, from the lack of moral conscience and the act of knowing what's right and wrong. And we're right there right now. So unless we wake people up, there's no great white knight on a big stallion. Even Donald Trump can't do all this thing by himself. It has to be grassroots. It has to be people coming up. It's a great time to be alive, Tom, because everybody can be a protagonist in this. Everybody can have agency in this. Everybody can stand up and be that light shining. But we're going to need good information. I'll put your Substack in. I think people should read your Substack, and we have to get the votes out. Tom, any last thoughts on this?
Let me say one other thing that on the Substack. People should realize that I document this everything I write. I document thoroughly with multitudes of research. I mean, just an enormous amount of research. So if anybody sees anything that's inaccurate, let me know, because I'm looking for the truth. I'm not looking to advance a particular agenda. I'm looking for the truth and advance the agenda. God's agenda is what I'm trying to do. So let me know.
Thank
and
you, Tom. Yeah.
Be assured that what I say in there is not. I don't base everything on just an opinion. I don't sit down and just write things off the top of my head. Everything I have is backed by many hours of research.
Yeah, and we need the confidence to do that, because unless you have confidence in what you're saying, you won't say anything. You'll sit back because these crazy people are going to attack you. But if you notice it, it's always without any substance. So all you need is a little bit of substance in your life every day, a little substance, and you're going to build up a database in your own brain, in your own heart of what's true, what's good, what's beautiful out there. And when people just start name calling, start asking questions. You'll know some of the answers already. Start asking questions. You'll see that there's nothing of substance to any of this craziness that's going on. They'll use words like, you're a bigot, you're racist, you're a homophobe, you're this, you're that. TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, is alive and well. All right, Thomas, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.